Hello everyone, this is Sumit Rathi here. Welcome back to my channel called Walk of Life. Hope you all are doing fine. So today I'm here in front of you all with the sixth episode of the series which I have just started called Conquer My MS Diagnosis Story. And the guest we have today with us, his name is Mike. He's the wonderful soul and a very happy guy. He was once listed as the most famous people with MS. I'm gonna be dropping down the link of the article. Please make sure that you check that out. So without wasting any time, let's just jump into the video and check from Mike how he was diagnosed with MS and what his symptoms are today and how he feel about it today. Hey, hi Mike. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. So, like I said, when you reached out to me about your story that you want to be part of it, and you also shared a link where it says that you are one of the famous people with having MS. So, I was so interested in talking to you because your story and your whole thing was very you want to say like I want to say like eye catchy to me, and it was just an attention grabbing thing. So I'm honored to have you on this series of mine actually.
Well, I was on the list of famous people when I was more of a well-known journalist, and I'm still a writer and a journalist. I have books, about my dogs and online and stuff, and so. But I also wrote about MS for the longest time as the Multiple Sclerosis National Examiner, and my story was really. It took me a long time to get diagnosed. I know you're specifically dealing with being diagnosed, and I had a hard time getting diagnosed. For the longest time, people thought I had giardia because I went to to Asia for a long period of time. I was tested for carpal tunnel syndrome, and I went through all kinds of tests, and they couldn't figure out. I was diagnosed with valley fever, which was a weird fever that where spores come up from the earthquakes in California. So I was diagnosed with all kinds of things, and it wasn't until I got my MS diagnosis that it was like it all came together, and it was like, oh, that's what it is. That's what all these symptoms are.
And honestly, when you sent me the link, I have read the story and I was like, oh, wow. I was like, you are the perfect example how you coped up with the whole thing which was going, and still you kept your calm with the whole situation where you were not even diagnosed. So that's what was really fascinating for me to know. And I was like, no, your story is unique and world needs to know your story. I'm sure you have that in your journal, and you like you said, you have already posted your story. But I was just like, okay, this is my way of presenting your story in front of world. So I was still interested, and the moment I got message back from you, I was like, cool, let's just do it.
Yeah, so I mean, it wasn't until I actually broke my foot walking my dogs on a hike, and I was limping back. And for 3 days, I was walking around, and I finally went to the emergency room, and they said, you should not have been able to walk on this leg, my right leg. And for years, my right arm had been numb, and and I was tested for carpal tunnel and nerve damage. And so my right side had always been numb. And they said, you should not have been able to walk on this. We're sending you to a neurologist. And I was like, oh, okay, why? Well, because should you should feel that pain that's on your broken foot. You broke three bones and you're walking around. So I went to a neurologist, and through again a series of tests, I had the MRIs and everything. And my neurologist, who has since retired, this was in 2000, by the way. This was in a long time ago, 2000. He said, he looked at the MRIs and he said, it looks like you have lesions and you may have multiple sclerosis. And I was like, may have? I want to know what is the final test? And he says, well, the best way is to do a spinal tap. And I was like, okay, well, God, that sounds horrible. When do we schedule that? We can do it right now. And I was like, what? And he's like, we'll do it right now. And he pulls out this big needle And my partner was there at the time, and he held my hand, and we did the spinal tap, and believe me, it was not as bad as people say. I mean, I know there's some anxiety, and some of your previous people were talking about how horrible a spinal tap is. It was not as bad. I mean, this was 20 years ago too, so, but I don't remember it being as bad as the anticipation of having a spinal tap. And he pulled it out and he showed the needle. It said, "You have white blood cells in your bloodstream. That means you have MS." And I was like, wow. So that was it. That was the diagnosis. And it took me years to get diagnosed. And I took all my files. I didn't believe it at first. And I took all my files and I was also teaching at UCLA. I was teaching journalism there. And I had the opportunity to have one of the world's leading experts at UCLA in MS research look at all my files. And he said, "Yep, you have MS." So that's how I
Wow.
got diagnosed.
That is something like you had like immense amount of patience and while going through this, because it takes a lot of courage to accept that you have it and you were not giving up and you were still doing it. So that's the best part about your story. And
Well, I think for me, it was a relief to find out that all of this other stuff that I had, the numbness in my face sometimes, and sometimes I would get, you know, these blinding headaches, and I would have migraines, and the numbness, both of my, all of that, it just made sense. It was like,
yes,
oh, that's what it is.
you know what? Like very rightly said, because many times what happens in diagnosis of people is it takes a lot of time for them to just figure out what exactly is going wrong with your body. But you stood there, you did that, and that's the best part of it. Because my diagnosis was pretty much easier. I want to say I won't say it like easy, but it's easy for me because I just lost my vision one day, and I was diagnosed within a month.
Yeah, and I think also it may be easier than it was 20 years ago to
You're
diagnose.
right. You're right. And it's the very possible that technology is grown and the education is grown. So yes, of course, now it is easier than what it was back then. So I'm really
I'm
thankful.
convinced that my grandfather, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say is I'm convinced my grandfather, who was a old Polish man who, came from Ellis Island, he always had a limp, and he always had numbness and shaking on his right hand, and he would slur, and people always thought he was drunk, but he never drank.
Wow.
And I'm convinced that he had MS, but he was never. First of all, they didn't have a diagnosis. He died in 1968, but I remember him as a child, and he hated going to the doctors, so he would never have even gone to the doctors. But I know that they say that maybe it's genetic, and thankfully my dad didn't have any, but they say it may be carried through the father, and so I really am convinced my grandfather had it.
I'm like again very rightly said, because people, there have been discussions going on that it runs in family. And like people like you and your stories kind of give that validation to the point what people are making. It's very well possible. Like I come from India and I have never even heard about this MS or multiple sclerosis prior to this. Like I was completely new to this whole topic.
And you
So
probably had relatives who may have had symptoms of it and never had the diagnosis because
you,
they don't have
you
the
know
test.
what? Now that you have told me about your grandfather, now I have to go back and like find out more about in my family whether it runs in family, because I have not seen anybody with those kind of symptoms. But I'm really convinced that what you said about your grandfather, and it's really amazing. And one thing I just loved what you said is how you have told people that spinal tap is not bad, because I myself was very scared. Of course, I have not had spinal tap done because my MRI was for my brain and my spinal cord, and that was enough to make them a decision that I have MS. So they didn't go for a spinal tap in my case. But I have read about it because since my diagnosis was going, so of course people do like go read about it, and I've heard people saying spinal tap, how horrible that feeling is. And I was just praying God every day that, gosh, please don't let them do my spinal tap. But I'm
It's
really happy that
not
what
as
you
bad as
said.
the anticipation. It sounds terrible, but it's not as
You're
bad as
right. You're right. And it anyway, at the end of the day, it depends how you take it.
the.
You know what? So it's very amazing that you said, and I feel really happy after talking to you and having you shared your story with me, because people need to know this, because there are many people who might relate your story with their own, and this is how we're gonna create this whole world where people are aware what MS is and what the symptoms are. Because outside, from the outside periphery, we do not look disabled, but we ourselves know how horrible pain is sometimes.
Well, who would imagine that you, with all you're doing, that you would, that you have MS too? And I get tired of people saying to me after I tell them, it's like, "Oh, how are you feeling?" and how terrible it is. I'm sorry, we're at Burbank Airport.
Yes, man.
But that's the other thing is I kind of don't want to tell people sometimes because then they always are asking like, "Oh, how are you?" and they expect you to feel bad. And sometimes you do wake up and you feel bad, but you don't want to be reminded that you have
You're right. And sometimes you don't need sympathy.
it.
You
Right.
don't.
One thing that I think is a common thread through a lot of your interviews recently is that you have to diagnose yourself. You have to tell your doctors, this is what I think, this is what I am, this is my body, and this is what I'm feeling. Because and also, I've believed that you need to get onto a treatment early. Because one of the things my doctor said initially was, well, you're not so bad right now, so you don't need anything until you get worse. If you wait until you get worse, it's harder to get better. So I wanted to get on a prophylactic drug really early, and I've been on all of them. I've been on Avonex, I've been on Tysabri, and for recently I was on Rituxan, which is same as Acrovera, which I think you're on.
Yes, I'm on Ocrevus. Yes.
Yeah, Ocrevus. Yeah, and so that's similar kind of thing. Rituxan actually is considered a cancer a rheumatoid arthritis drug. It's not approved for MS like the one you're on, but it's exactly the same thing essentially. And I did the infusions, and now my B cells are zero, so I don't need to be on it anymore. So I haven't been on it for 2 years. But so it's kind of scary because it's the first time in 20 years that I have not been on a regular medication. I was on Tysabri for 7 years until it stopped, until they found out that I had the JC virus, which, but I highly recommend, first of all, that you take charge of your own diagnosis. You tell the doctors what you think you have, look to see if you have similar symptoms, insist on the tests that will prove that you have it, and then insist on getting on a medication that maybe your insurance will approve. And
You're right. You're right. And I mean, I'm really thankful for you to educate people on this, because a lot of time you are the best judge of your own body.
right.
I'm really glad that I got a chance to talk to you. And I'm again really thankful for for accepting my scheduled interview and telling your story and giving your most inputs on most of the things like spinal tap, like medication, and how you should deal with it. And trust me, I just want to give you a compliment. You look much healthier right now. You do not look like you have an MS.
I'm 60 years old.
Well, well, no, you don't look like it. Again, you do not look like it. And I'm
I've
really,
been letting my hair grow out because of the pandemic, but
well,
well, thank you. I'm honored, and keep up the good work.
thank you. And I'll keep the word educated and keep inspiring people, because you are an inspirational person. So please keep doing that and keep smiling, because it can make somebody's day. So
Thank
please
you.
do that. Thank
Thank you.
you. And Hope you all have enjoyed the 6th episode of the series. I'm really thankful that Mike has told us about the spinal tap. It's not as scary as it looks like or as you read on the internet about it. So for more such stories, keep subscribing my channel if you haven't already, and keep spreading the word and these beautiful stories in front of the world. Make sure you hit the like button and keep spreading. Thank you and bye-bye. Love you all.